Before we get started on the column graph, you should have downloaded the Fire Statistics data file found in your Project Resources folder. Since we're creating a column graph, the data set for this exercise is going to be located at the bottom of this text file using all of the data found under the column Design Indicators title. In addition to this, you should have also downloaded the Simple Match EPS file from the exercise folder on Moodle as well. We'll use this file later once we start setting up our actual column graph. So to get started, let's jump into Adobe Illustrator, go up to File and create a new document. The name of this document can simply be called a column graph. The height and width of it will be set to 10 inches, one artboard with no bleed, and under the advanced options, make sure you're working in RGB color mode. We'll say create, and this will give us our work area to work in. The next thing we need to do is locate our column tool at the bottom of our toolbox. If you click and hold, you can see there's a variety of different graph tools to choose from. We're going to choose the first column graph tool. We'll click and drag over our artboard area to start our simple column graph, and this will also open up our data entry set dialog box. I'm going to move Illustrator out of the way so I can go back to our text document, and I'm going to highlight all of our data for our column graph from January all the way down to 6 under December. We can go to Edit and Copy. Let's jump back into Illustrator and make sure the first cell is selected on your data entry. Then we can go to Edit and paste in the data that we have. Once it's there, hit the checkbox to apply it, and you'll notice that when we applied it, your column doesn't look correct. I'm going to close out my data entry. We need to adjust the type and settings for this particular graph that we've created. So with it still selected, let's go back up to Object, down to Graph, and choose Type. The first thing we need to do is to adjust our vertical axis. So let's go to the Value axis and uncheck Override Calculated Values. Now when we say OK, you can see this will bring everything up back into position. Let's go back to Object and open up the graph type again. Also underneath the Value axis, where it says tick marks, let's change the length of it from short to full width, and drawing one tick mark for every division. We'll say OK, and this will bring our tick marks all the way across so that we can see the area that it's in. The next thing I want to do is to add a fun detail to our bar graph that we have here. Instead of having the default black or colored squares and rectangles, I actually want to add a graphic to my area. To do this, I'm going to open up that Simple Match EPS file that we had saved from our Moodle page. I'm going to select it, go up to Edit and Copy, or Cut, come back to my graph column, and then go to Edit and paste it. With it pasted off to the side, the next thing I need to do is to add an indicator where I want to stretch this along. This won't make any sense until we actually apply it, but let me show you how to do this. To add the indicator, choose your Line Segment tool, set your Fill and Stroke to be None, and let's draw a simple line. Whoops, I lost it. Let's draw a simple line underneath the top of the match head right there. It's got no fill and no stroke, but it's now a part of that object. With that drawn, choose your Selection tool and select the match area. We'll go down to Object, Graph, and choose Design. With Design open and with your match still selected, choose New Design. And notice that this will give it a preview. If you want, you can also rename it. So choose Rename and save it from New Design to Match Design. And we'll say OK to that, and then we'll say OK to this one. With this design now saved, let's go back to our graph, select it. Now we can go to Object, down to Graph, and choose Column. We want to change up how our columns look. Instead of having the default None design, choose your Match design and set your column type to be sliding. With sliding, this will take a look at the artwork that you have, and it will take any part that's below that indicator that we drew and will expand it out. It'll slide it out. We'll say OK, and this is the area that we have. Notice that it will stretch out everything except for the little top that we have from here. You can play around with some other ways of designing out your columns, but this is the one that I want you to choose for this particular area. Now that it's done, all we have to do is to clean up our numbering and the rest of our design for this area. I'm going to select it again, choose my scale tool, and scale it down just slightly so that it fits on my board. Next, I'll choose my direct selection tool, and let's click on the text down at the bottom of my graph, and we'll change the font for this to be something nice and readable, but also a little bit smaller. And just to make it a little bit more readable, since they're all running together, I'm going to choose every other one and drag it down to offset it just a little bit. Additionally, I'll choose my rectangle tool, and let's give this a nice background. I'll click and drag over the area, and we'll fill it in with one of those bright swatches from our bright gradients. The last thing I need you to do is to add the percentages back to the data that we see here. So in addition to this, let's also open up our data points. I'm going to choose my type tool, type out a 12 for now, and let's make it a little bit larger so that we can go ahead and place that right there. Change my text color to something noticeable like 12, or excuse me, like white. I'm going to make a copy of it on top of all of these. And so all I have to do now is choose my type tool and place it exactly where it needs to go. With that done, let's choose our type and replace each of the text. That will be 11, this one will be 7, 13, 2 and 2. Again, choosing my selection tool and nudging everything over the appropriate amount. Once you're finished with this, we can get rid of our original matchstick. Let's move it around so that it fits nicely inside of our artboard area. And we can go up to File and Save. The title of this will be kept at Graph Column as an Illustrator file. We'll say Save. And this Illustrator file is what you'll upload to Moodle once you're finished. As far as the rest of the design, it can be left up to you how you want it to look and how you want the colors, text, and everything else to flow together.